So in part one we created the clothes material, and I'm going to basically use the same base material and duplicate with connections to network. What that does is that duplicates the shader and then allows me to customize some of its attributes so that I can get a more realistic looking metal, and also skin, and I think those are the shaders we're going to go with. Skin, metal, and we already have clothing here. So what I'm going to do is, if you no longer have your clothes shader graphed out in the work area, go to what I usually do is, as you can see, there's this dotted line, and you can just drag that down, or you might already be showing it. You just select Close DX, and just remember that anything you select within the Hypershade library, and by library I mean if you go into materials or textures and select any of these previews, any of these thumbnails, any of these nodes, and click Input Output Connections, then you can see all of the textures connected to the shader. And also remember that if you have an actual piece of geometry, an object selected, and you want to show the material on the object, you would click this button instead, which is Graph Materials on Selected Objects. As you can see, it gives me the same thing because right now I have one material on everything. We're going to change that because metal has specific surface properties, as does skin, which is distinct from the clothing. So first thing we're going to do is, once you have the clothing graphed out, select it, and if you're seeing this and you want this to be maximized in the work area, press the A key and it will fit all to view. So I'm selecting Clothes DX. I'm going into the Hypershades edit menu, and I'm going to the duplicate menu, and I'm going to with connections to network. And if I click this, you'll see that it creates a new material that still has the same ties to all the textures that this original clothes material had. I'm going to go ahead and make this my metal material, so I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to call this metal underscore DX. OK. So with this metal DX now selected, we're going to turn off its diffuse properties, because remember we talked about in class that one of the things about metal is that it's all the light that we're seeing reflecting off of metallic surfaces are in its specular and reflective settings. We won't have anything under diffuse. So I'm going to do a couple of things under the diffuse section. I'm going to uncheck diffuse map. Oh, and also make sure that for sure you're in the metal DX, because they look very similar. So you don't want to mistakenly change these settings in the clothes. Be sure you're in metal, and uncheck diffuse map, and also set its diffuse color to 0, and also make sure IBL map is unchecked. Everything is already set up from before for specularity, normal map, and reflection, so that should be good to go. Now what we need to do is select the objects, the geometry that is labeled metal in the outliner. Then I'm going to right click and hold over metal DX, and 12 o'clock position, assign material to selection. Not much of a change, but now these settings are more appropriate to real metal, in the sense that they have no diffuse, and all of the reflection, all of the light that we're seeing is coming from the specular and the reflective. And now I'm going to create the next version of this shader. So I'm going to go back to clothes. So I'm selecting that shader. Then I'm going to edit, duplicate with connections network, same as we did before. And this time, let's rename this skin underscore DX. And we'll need to make a few more changes this time around, because skin has specific diffuse and specular models that are different from most other materials that we would work with. So let's go down to diffuse, and under diffuse model, let's switch it from Lambert to skin, blended normal skin. Okay. And let me move my camera. And let's go ahead and choose. We might want to do a different one for the Leprechaun and the Goblin. We'll create a skin for just the Leprechaun for now, and later on, if we want to have different colors for the scattering, the subsurface scattering, later on, we might change it for the Goblin. But for now, we'll just create the skin for the Leprechaun himself. So select the Leprechaun geometry. Right click and hold over skin DX, assign material to selection. Okay. One thing you'll notice is the skin becomes a lot softer, and that's one of the things that this setting does, this new diffuse model, the blended normal. Okay. And also notice how blended normal can also be controlled via a mask, and also via this slider. And if you tweak this slider, you can see that it took a little while to update there, but you can see that the more you tweak the slider, the more it tends to give you a more softened look. In fact, this seems to have the effect of subsurface scattering itself. It kind of gives us that sort of effect. Okay. So just know that once you set it to blended normal, that you have control over this. Okay. And again, as you can see, when you have this set high enough, it almost looks like he's made out of wax. He's just very translucent. Maybe a little too translucent, so let's turn things back. And maybe to somewhere around. I kind of like this look, so I might want to have it a little higher than what I normally would. So let me try a 0.3 for the blended